The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here along with Dan Rylance, and we're very pleased to be joined tonight by two of the candidates running for the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education this spring. Currently we will have four candidates on the ballot. Incumbents Tom McDermott and Ben Schneider II are seeking another term on the board. There are also four challengers, two of whom are making their first foray into Oshkosh politics, and both are here this evening. Kevin Jahnke is with us now, and later in the program, Jahnke and Lemberger will be joining us. So we'll be talking to them. The primary is slated for Tuesday, February 19th, and the top four vote getters in that race will move on to the general election, which will be held on Tuesday, April 1st. So thanks very much for being here, Kevin. We appreciate you taking time out to come in and chat with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Tell us, a little bit about yourself and why you're running for office. Let's start there.
I was explaining to him a little bit earlier when we were standing outside. My wife and I have been involved with the district probably for about the last 10 years or so. We have a severely autistic son, and in about year 2000 we had a confrontation with the district regarding services for my son for autism. And after that was resolved, my wife and I guess, were instrumental in getting the autism program started in Oshkosh. After that's resolved, I've been kind of keeping up with the district and what's going on, et cetera, and about a year and a half ago, I was asked by the administration to get involved with the community response team, which I thought about for a while and then got involved with that. And since that time, it's been, I say, about a year and a half already, I've also joined the special education team under Cheryl and Wellen, which was a neat team to be on, especially with my son. Also, I'm a member of Team 6, which is the final team that's going to bring the recommendation to the board, hopefully. Also have been on the committee for the architectural committee to select the architectural selection committee. I was involved in that, and I've just learned a wealth of information over the last year and a half or so, and just got more involved and just decided to run. Okay,
all right, good. Well, just kind of as an aside note, since you do have a severely autistic son, how do you feel about some of the efforts that Governor Doyle is making in the areas of autism?
We were talking about that too outside, and I think it's excellent. It's too bad in the last vote that didn't get passed, but I see it's still staying out there. It's not being hidden or anything, and in fact we've written some letters too to keep the ball rolling, and especially from a assurance standpoint for autistic families. There's a huge burden there, especially with services that are provided. My wife and I had gone through that many years before, and it is very expensive, so we're definitely waiting to see how that works out, but go Governor Doyle.
All right. Well, let's talk about the community response team and your efforts there. First of all, that's one of the committees that was set up to kind of help lead the district through this boundary change and the facilities plan, the 10-year plan, and so forth. And certainly there's been, I think it's an understatement to say there's been a lot of frustration in the community over the different scenarios and plans that have been brought forth, and then they sort of fall by the wayside when a pocket of neighbors pipes up and says we don't like this. And you too have expressed some frustration with the process. What has been your greatest frustration that you've seen, or maybe there's multiple ones, but what are your frustrations?
Since being on the community response team, again, I've learned just a wealth of information from the district and all the meetings and stuff we've had, and it seems as we go along and the teams report their findings and we come to a idea that seems like it's a great idea or whatever, such as the boundaries or whatever. I think we offered, the district came up with and a community response team looked. I think we offered 9 different plans at the time that we offered to the board, and none of the plans were looked at. Like you said, they were looked at time after time, and then different groups would come in, and then, well, that plan's no good, and that plan's no good, depending on what group came in. But yet, all of those plans had some good, significant ideas, and a couple of them were really, the ones that we thought were the best ones. And the board said, well, no, out of those 9. And we just can't decide on them. And then I think they even decided then, well, we'll go out and make our own plan, which they did. I think they spent a full day and off-site or something, didn't they? And
had a retreat. Yeah.
We had a retreat and came up with 2 plans, and came back and offered that back to the community response team again. And we went over it, and we're all thinking, hey, maybe we're going here. We're getting something going. And backed one of the plans, and it went back to the board for a vote. And the 2 or 3 members that actually wanted to go off-site or go to the retreat and do that, they didn't support the plan, whereas the other 4 did, and everybody became very frustrated with that. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the one that, I don't know, bothered me more than anything, that we can't come to a resolution or an agreement on anything going forward, and that one sticks out in my mind, that we've got to come together with some of this stuff, so it's very important.
Well, before I give Dan a chance to jump in here, why do you think that there can't be some kind of consensus on that board? Is it personalities? Is it personal politics over, what should be just politics in general? Is it a combination of them? Is it neighbors putting too much pressure on the district? What do you think it is?
I think you hit with all 3 of those. I think there's a lot of that going on. I think politics comes into it. Neighbors definitely, when a boundaries plan was put out there, I don't know if you saw all the meetings and stuff, but the boardrooms were packed, and neighbor after neighbor after neighbor, and there is a lot of pressure there, and I understand their concerns. I was in one of the neighborhoods also. So it's definitely concerns. But as far as priorities are concerned, what's best for the children in the district should be what's on the board member's mind, and I guess that's what I always keep going back to is you're not going to please everyone. That's got to be understood, and yet every time, we need to relook at this, or we need to back up and go, and it just got very, very frustrating. I think one of the members of our team said we're at the point of analysis paralysis. We've got the data, and we're at a point of now a decision just needs to be made to go forward on to the next team and the next team, et cetera. And really, how much more data can you take before it's just not doing any good anymore? And I think we were at that point.
Which plan had you favored?
I actually liked the option E, and I know that was the one that probably was the one that had the most non-favor to it or whatever, but again, looking at what's best for the district for going forward for 10 years and into the future, I liked how it aligned. I liked how it made the schools efficient, et cetera, and it gave us some good leeway going forward. So, so be it.
Thanks for appearing.
Yep, thank you.
The show is being taped on January 10th, which is less than 48 hours after the end of the New Hampshire presidential primary.
Right.
And the buzzword this week has been change. Everyone now is saying change. So my question to you is, locally, do you view this year's school board election as a change election as well? And if so, what changes would you be for? And if you're not for change, tell us why not.
I think change probably for this election would be good. And as I said earlier, I've been following the district for probably the last 7, 8, 9 years, and not real close, but I've been at a lot of meetings, watch on television a lot, and I guess I've seen the same types of politics and challenges or problems throughout the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and now with the facilities plan, even more. It's even been more apparent. And as she was asking earlier, is it a difference between board members and that or whatever? It's almost to a point now where if some board members vote yes, some other board members are going to vote no. And I think the idea of really, why are you on the board? What's your main priority for being on the board? I think that's been lost. And so I think maybe it is time for change where we need a board that really has their priorities together of why are you running on a board or why are you sitting on the Board of Education, and so maybe change is necessary. And my stance on that is if your main priority isn't for the children of our district, then why are you there? And so I've got a problem with that.
Yeah. Follow-up question. You were quoted in Northwestern as saying, quote, "I'm very disappointed in some of the board members for being so negative about the district and the facilities plan." Now, there are two incumbents running. Are you more dissatisfied with one of those rather than the other?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, most certainly.
So, not for words in your mouth, but I sense your criticism here is directed more towards the incumbent, Ben Schneider II, rather than it is against Mr. McDermott. Would that be a fair statement?
That would be a fair statement.
Okay.
I have nothing against
No.
Mr. Schneider personally.
I understand. But you clearly are offering then voters a choice that you would like a different mindset on the board than what he offers. Would that be?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Want to get back to special ed just for a minute?
Sure.
The special ed plans that you have worked on and have seen, are they something that's positive for you and your wife and your son? They're going to be better in terms of location of where the special ed program is going to be offered? What's good about what they're doing with the removement of special ed students?
Well, I think one of the teams that has been working has been the K348. That was one of the first that came up. And myself being involved with the special ed team, with Karen Llewellyn was the leader of our team. When K348 was passed by the board as the base for what the other teams would be working off from, I met with Karen, I think a day later, or talked to her a day later, and she was elated because from her standpoint, now, which has been lacking for a very long time in the district, the availability of all programs and services across the district now with K348, she says she literally gets to start over with special ed from square one and allow to put the services and in the schools across the district to better offer it to all across town rather than having children from the east side go all the way over to the west, et cetera. And so I would have to say yes, very, very importantly, K348 offers that availability for special education students across the district.
So what you're saying is that for special ed students, there would be more neighborhood schools than what exists now?
That is exactly right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The intention of doing it that way.
Quick, two other questions.
Sure.
Would you support a referendum at this point?
Well, we still haven't gotten
Right.
to a point of a total and where we all are, and I think you've just heard a day or so also ago, our Team 6 met, and now some of the numbers coming in are much higher
Much
yet.
higher.
They're much higher yet, and very honestly, between you and I thought they were going to be, so.
You did.
But at this point, I still think there's an awful lot of details that need to be cleaned up and flushed out, so at this point, we still got a lot of work to do.
But you're not running against not having a referendum or changing or closing some elementary schools?
I'm not running against that?
No. Okay.
Nope.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about the architectural, study and recommendation that was just kind of put forth earlier this week. Initially, we'd been hearing figures possibly as high as $45 million for, school renovations, school closings, possibly a new school, and now Bray and Associates, or whatever their name is,
Bray and Associates.
has come up with, they've toured all the schools and they've come up with their estimates of what it's going to cost to do renovations, closures, and so forth. And, we're looking at something close to $60 million. And by the time the board makes a decision, I suspect it'll probably be even higher than that.
I would have to agree with you.
There wasn't very much support out there before, Kevin, for a referendum at 40 to 45 million. There surely is not going to be support, I can't imagine, for this increased number. and we've heard the district say they're not going to do a referendum until next year. Excuse me, until next year. But where do you think this district needs to start to start cementing some of the problems that have been going on, and smoothing over some of the ill feelings that have been agitated during the last year, and to get us to a point where voters in this district can come to some kind of a consensus and maybe pass a referendum of some kind? It's not going to be this high probably, but
never know.
We
Yeah.
need money to some degree to do something.
We truly do.
Because clearly the money's not there. So we need to pass a referendum. What do we have to do to get to that point?
And again, from being in the CRT team the last year and a half or so, I see one of the biggest concerns or problems I say going forward, I think, is misinformation that is taken out there and then blown out of proportion. But I think that maybe one of the biggest problems is communication, and as far as getting down to some detail that the public understands about our schools, about the problems and the challenges we're currently facing. I don't think the community really knows that. Last, I think it was February, I think I'd written that down, February 17th of last year, a bunch of the CRT members got together, the ASC team also, and some board members. I think 2 or 3 board members came. We toured the 9 schools that were, I think, the 4 or 5 at that time that were going to be closed, and 4 or 5 others to get some perspective, to just get a good feel for where the district was as far as facilities and equity, et cetera. And you wouldn't believe the differences we saw, and in some cases, I mean, I couldn't believe that the kids were actually going to school in some of these schools where they were literally falling down, and I don't know how many acres of roofs that we need to have redone, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the community really needs to see this and understand this, and I don't think enough community members do. We had a Christmas party in our neighborhood just before Christmas, and I mentioned that I was running for the board and got some signatures and stuff, and they were asking me questions also, and I said, you guys wouldn't believe, over here in Traeger, it's like, wow, this is great or whatever, but you go across town to some of the other schools in Roosevelt and some of these, and you wouldn't believe the differences, and is that fair to our kids across the district that it's not equitable or whatever? And a lot of people just don't know these things. They're just not aware of the challenges that the districts has. So I think communication of these details and stuff is key to get this going. To get this going.
It's catching, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. I think the district can always do a better job of communication. That has been, while they've made some inroads in that area, I think that's been an argument for some time, and a criticism that I think is probably well justified. But do you think it's just lack of communication, or is it maybe that people are so wrapped up oftentimes in themselves and what's happening within their own child's school that they really don't care too much about what may be happening at another school? It's kind of the me
I
thing.
think there's a lot of truth to that.
And I
Very much
I
so.
would suspect, probably rightfully so, that is why we saw people coming forward from different neighborhoods every
the
time a
boundaries.
different plan
I would-
was brought forward.
I would have to agree with you.
So,
Big
how do we
time.
overcome that then?
It's very difficult. It really is. Again, like you said, they're looking at just what happens to my child and what happens in my neighborhood, and you really need to take a step back and say, look at the whole district. We really need to do that. Some people are telling me also that while the PMP reports, I think that were done many years back already too, and then we had the community events, the forums, and unfortunately too, that was plenty of notice. And I attended all of the forums, and 21 people would show up at one forum out of a community of 60-some thousand. And the next one, I think we had 37 or something like that. That is really not a good example of community involvement. And again, I think it's what you're saying. They just, at this point, it's just, if it doesn't affect my school, I don't worry about it. And I think that's something we have to somehow overcome. And
That's your greatest challenge.
that's a very good challenge.
Yeah.
Yep. To inform the public to a point that we're at a point of doing nothing is no longer an option. We've had that statement since the CRT team and ASC team was created and we started this whole process. The statement that we keep bringing back every time is that doing nothing is no longer an option. We're at a point where the facilities are in desperate need of an upgrade. We're at a point of cutting any more administration or any more needs in the admin building. We'll get to a point now where you're going to be cutting programs, you're going to be cutting services. So we're at a point where something has to be done to bring the district up to equitable status for every student. We really need to do something.
So if you were elected to the board then, Kevin, would you be in favor of this board at that time just saying, okay, we're going to go back to square one here. We're going to start reviewing the plans that have already been brought forward. We're going to take a look at these and maybe, now you were in favor of option E, maybe it needs to be tweaked a little bit, but, looking at what has already been proposed, tweaking what needs to be tweaked, and making a decision, getting off the dime, getting off that fence, making a decision, and let the chips fall where they may. Are you going to be that kind of board member?
Yes, I am. The position I currently hold where I work, I have to make decisions, and they're not always popular, and sometimes they're even quick and down and dirty. The nice thing I like so far about being involved with the community response team, et cetera, is there's been a lot of data and a lot of information that's been passed, and the teams we've worked with have been just tremendous, and the administration has been just great, and everything that they've brought out and information. And I think you can make logical decisions at this time. And are you going to please everyone? Absolutely not. You're going to have the naysayers and if it affects my school, no way. And that is going to happen. And I'm sorry, I agree with you. Where you make a decision and where the chips fall, and you go forward. And if it is wrong or if it's the wrong direction, hopefully down the road then you fix it again or whatever. But you take what you got, you do make your best decision, and you go from there.
One other real quick question.
Yep.
On the plans that, and the recommendations from Bray Associate Architects, we don't have time, of course, to go over each one of these, even in general terms, much less any kind of specificity. But do you agree with what they've said in their report and the recommendations that they've made? Or is there an area where maybe you're kind of thinking, I don't necessarily agree with that?
Thus far, I think they're still lacking a few schools. I think we're 2 to 3 schools short yet of their specific design changes and the numbers that they were going to bring up. So that just came from the last meeting. But thus far, it's been very informative, and I think I would have to say thus far I agree with the ideas that they've had, the changes they've offered for the schools. Are the dollars right where they need to be? That I don't know for sure. Can that be tweaked? They have given us options in the last meeting we just had that in some cases this may not have to be changed yet, but we're seeing this maybe a few years down the line, so we're putting it in the plan now. If you want to, cross it off, so they're giving us those options too. So like I say, the numbers may have to be tweaked somewhat, but thus far, I think they're coming up with some very good plans. The one thing we liked about Bray, and I was on the committee that got to choose the architect, is they're very visual, and they've got some very good drawings and site plans and stuff to show us, and hopefully after a while show the district of what plans we're planning on doing, what changes we're planning on doing to the school.
Okay.
So we really like that.
And just listening to you and Cheryl talk about this, I get the sense that your feet are on the ground and you've sort of been a school board candidate, in the running, in the sense that you know all of these physical situations. You've been on these committees. You obviously have gone to all these schools. So it seemed to me that would be a plus for you to try to get through this in the next year. I have a couple of general questions. What do you think the primary purpose of the K through 12 education is, just off the top of your head? Why are we educating these kids? What's our primary purpose to educate these kids?
I'm sorry, the K 3, 4, 8? Or
no,
just
the whole thing, K through 12, public education in Oshkosh. What's our primary purpose for public education?
to get them ready for life, to get them ready for advanced education.
What should we be getting them ready for in life? What areas do you think are are most important for life?
Specifically,
Yeah.
as far as careers, or I'm
Well,
sorry.
No Child Left Behind, for example, has put an unbelievable emphasis on only two categories, reading and math.
True.
And we're testing the hell out of these kids for reading and math. We're downplaying social studies, we're downplaying art, we're downplaying music, and nothing about citizenship. So, I guess my bias is that are we putting too much emphasis on only two things and kind of
And putting the rest aside.
putting the rest aside?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I'm not a big proponent of
No Child Left Behind.
No Child Left
Yeah,
Behind,
yeah.
right? And again, from being involved for the last few years, I've seen some of the dissatisfaction and some of the challenges the district has seen with that firsthand, and speaking to them, and I would have to agree with that. I think
Special ed students have to be tested with their regular peers under No
Yes,
Child
they
Left
do.
Behind, don't they?
yes, and that's there again. My son is very
Yeah.
disabled, so it's a very difficult situation.
How about inclusion? Are you satisfied with the level of inclusion in the school district?
Karen Llewellyn, again, we had, I was supposed to go to a meeting down in Madison that they were having on inclusion, and unfortunately I couldn't make it, that my schedule didn't allow it, but she had gone to that with another district personnel, and they've got some excellent data and information back on that. And so at this point, I think we're looking at inclusion and possibly changing some of that in our district.
But there is inclusion going on right
Definitely.
now. Yeah.
And there's really some good data out there that the more inclusion there is, it's better for all of the students, including the special needs kids. So,
What do you think of charter schools?
the ones they've spoken about thus far and that I'm aware of and familiar with, so far so good. I look at very positive results from them, and I think as long as they're positive and there's some good results from them, I'm for them.
Not too specialized away from a general core of education?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. As long as it doesn't get too far away where it's really out there,
Yeah.
So
They're kind of exotic.
they are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We are just about out of time here for this particular segment. Why don't you take
I'm just
about...
getting warmed up.
I know, but hey, if you win in the primary,
You'll
we'll
be
have you
back.
back and you'll
Yeah.
have more time.
Hopefully.
Why don't you take about 35, 45 seconds, look into camera 3, tell folks why they should vote for you on Tuesday, February 19th.
Okay, well, thank you. My name is Kevin Jahnke. I've been a member of the community response team, the special ed team, Team 6 for about the last year and a half. I'm running for school board. My main purpose for running for school board is that I would for sure have the students as my number one priority, and if I would greatly appreciate, I'm sorry, and if you agree with what I'm saying, I would greatly appreciate your vote.
All right. Is there a contact number where people can reach you, or do you have an email address or something?
My contact number at home right now, and I'll probably get my email address. I'm going to. You want that right now?
Sure. Why don't you give me your
My
phone
home number is 426-1837.
Okay. And I assume early evening, not past 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I
is
was going to
probably
say
best.
if it would be before 7 o'clock, I'd greatly appreciate it.
All right, terrific. Well, thank you so much for being here, and
Thank
good
you.
luck to you
Thanks
next
for
month.
inviting me. I
We're going
appreciate
to
it.
take a very short break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Jahnke and Lemberger, another candidate for Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education. We'll be right back.
Escape.
By foot,
Run across a border.
I couldn't practice my religion.
I was put to work in forced labor camps.
If I stay in Cambodia, I would have been dead by now.
If you think differently, then you're an enemy.
If you know how to read and write, you're dead. If you speak your mind, you're dead.
The only way to express what I wanted to do was to get out.
I got to the country when I was about 14 years old.
I was 20.
I was 24.
I came here with nothing. No money, no English.
America stood for freedom, it stands for freedom, and that's what all my generation, young generation, wanted to be there.
For the first time, I felt like I have a right to be on this earth.
Here, you can do whatever you want to do.
I love my life here. I feel at home.
I'm free to do what I want.
Freedom to me means my life.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks.
If only child abuse were this easy to recognize. If you even suspect abuse, call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. All calls are anonymous and confidential. Trust your instincts.
Poor nutrition today will increase Sarah's chances of anemia, add to her healthcare costs, sick days, even stunt her ability to learn. And the thing is, Sarah's not even born yet. Get proper nutrition before it's too late. Call or visit WIC. WIC provides nutrition information, healthcare referrals, even food. Your child has you, and you have WIC.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. We're very pleased to be joined now by another candidate for the school district's Board of Education. Jahnke and Lemberger is here, and welcome. Thanks very much for coming down tonight. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Welcome, John.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't we start, as we do with all candidates, and you tell us and the viewers a little bit about yourself and why you're getting into this crazy race at this insane time.
Okay, a little bit about me. I'm from Oshkosh originally. My family's been in Oshkosh. I think I'm 5th generation or something like that. So, you know, I'm invested in the city. I care a lot about the city. And I've been in education for most of my life, so I care a lot about education. Does that kind of answer that question?
Well, sure. What do you do in education?
Okay. Well, I started out as a biology major in college and got a teaching degree in secondary education and taught for a while. And then I went back and worked on a doctorate for a little while in Milwaukee at Marquette University and didn't like it. It was in physiology. And I decided that really wasn't my calling, to be a lab researcher. So we left there. My then wife and I left there and ended up in Wild Rose, and it was a beautiful community. And I did a lot of substitute teaching in Wild Rose, and it was interesting. It was very interesting because I was able to see the same kids in different classrooms, and how they learned differently in different subject areas, and what the commonalities were and the differences. And it started to develop all kinds of questions about how kids learn in education and things like that. So it just happened that my old professor, a methods class teacher, was still at Oshkosh, and so I was always coming back and bugging him. You know, all kinds of questions about things. And so he finally said, "John, you just got to go back to school and get a doctorate and figure this all out for yourself." So, so at that point, I went down to Madison and got a doctorate in curriculum and instruction. And when I finished there, I applied to everything that was open, and just so happened that there was an opening in Oshkosh, and applied there, and they made me the first offer. I had a lot of debt, so I took it. And I'm glad I did. I got back into the community, and I've been here now at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh for, I think this is my 13th year in the curriculum and instruction department.
So I'm assuming that is where you feel your unique strength lies as far as what you would bring to the school board.
I think so, yeah. I mean, you know, I do my scholarship in educational research. Obviously, my area is science, and but I know how to read research. I know how to look at different curricula that the board might be considering and understand the research base behind it maybe better than the average person. Okay. So in terms of helping with decision making on things, I think I would be a good asset for the board.
Okay. Well, one of the major stumbling blocks, if you will, facing this board right now, and has been for a while, is the boundary issue and the facilities plan. We have seen this thing kicked around. I think they've been talking about it for better than 10 years, but in the last year and a half, it's really, you know, the pace of it has really stepped up, and with it tempers, and I think the newspaper referred to it as petulance on the part of some of the school board members. The community members have come out in you know, packs to jam into the boardroom to talk about their feelings. And still, after all this, we are no closer, I don't think, to finding a resolution to this. What has your take as an outsider and now a school board candidate been on what we've seen in the last year or so?
Well, I feel frustration. I mean, I think that's the thing that finally motivated me to run. I've thought about it for a few years. But watching this process unfold has been very frustrating as an educator and also as a taxpayer. But my take on it, it seems to me, I remember a couple years ago that Oshkosh realized they were going to have a budget deficit or a structural deficit, whatever they called it. And I remember talking to a couple of the board members back then and saying, well, why don't you just float a referendum and make up the difference? And they said, no. People of Oshkosh would never go for that. And then they went forward with this plan to somehow solve that problem. And I think they're up to, what, $60 million was reported in the Northwestern now?
That's the latest number.
Yeah.
Yep.
And being in Oshkosh for a long time, Oshkosh people are pretty generous. We've voted to renovate the Grand and all that kind of stuff, and Reed School and a number of other places, but this seems to be a little bit over the top. And it was interesting when I was collecting my nomination signatures, I made a point of going door to door for some of them. And went down my street for a few blocks and then back up the other side. And I met a lot of people in houses that I had driven by a long time. And it was interesting. I was really surprised how many people were living alone in those houses. Elderly people, probably on fixed incomes. And although I've always been I'm on record as being a pretty good advocate for the benefits of taxes and what we can do by pooling our money for the common good, one thing I learned on that little walk is that we also have to be careful not to overtax people so that they lose what they already have. And so I think we walk a real fine line between the common good that we can do with our taxes and going too far. Mm-hmm. So and I think this might be too far. I mean, I was thinking about this. There's $60 million? I kind of keep saying that over because it just doesn't seem like a real number. And there's about 60,000 people in this district, roughly. So that's like $1,000 for every man, woman, and child. And that doesn't count the interest on the loan and all that. And so, how long will it take before we start realizing any kind of return on such a big investment? I'd probably be dead.
Just for the record, John, you're already opposed to the $46 million.
Yes.
So I mean, it's not like the $60 million is a heavy burden on your shoulders.
Yeah.
You were quoted as saying, "I don't agree with spending $46 million to basically close a bunch of neighborhood schools." So
right.
your fiscal responsibility is much lower than the 60, right?
Yeah, I think that, and this brings up a whole other thing about neighborhood schools. I'm here to be an advocate for neighborhood schools.
I want to know what you mean by neighborhood schools.
Well, I think that, and what do you mean by small schools? And of course, those are kind of fuzzy terms. But I've been doing a lot of reading on this, and small schools are, and it varies. When we're talking about elementary schools, closer to 200 than 400. Maybe.
So we're going to double the number of elementary schools?
No. I think that we need to try and preserve what we have. Okay. Now I understand Traeger's over 500. That was designed to be that way, and that's the way that's going to be. But I don't want to give up. There's a lot of benefits for small schools, and I think that I'm afraid, just from what I've read in the newspaper and that, I think that the board has sometimes forgotten the human element in education. That children are not emotionless learning units that we can just kind of move around and put in classrooms and download information into. They need to feel secure in the classroom. They need to feel like they have a personal connection with the teacher. And all the research and studies on small schools say that sort of thing is enhanced. And really, when you look at student achievement, when small schools work, those are the reasons. The connection between the students and the sense of place that they have, and that builds a sense of where they can be relaxed, and when you're relaxed, you can learn. And there's all sorts of other stuff about that in terms of student discipline problems go down in smaller schools and all that kind of
I
stuff.
think you're absolutely right. To get down to the, do you like the K-3-4-8 split, for example? You're a curriculum and instruction professor. How does that fit your
I like the middle school concept, and to me, middle school is 6 through 8,
okay,
with houses within that school.
Okay. Which we kind of have now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that would do. Now, I've read the argument that by putting the younger kids into those buildings sooner, that sort of begins to ease the transition from an elementary school to a middle school.
But most of them are there already.
I don't understand.
Well, Webster Stanley Elementary School and middle school is 4 through 8.
And Traeger's.
Right. So, I mean, that argument that, God, all of a sudden we're going to expose 4 and 5 to 6 and 8 is, the numbers don't justify that, right?
I don't think so. I think that, I mean, I would favor keeping it the way it is. I think that the elementary schools, children at that level of development, both especially emotionally and socially, need to have the security of those neighborhood schools. And and there's other things too. I think that you get more parental involvement with neighborhood schools. The school's more accessible to the kids after school for after-school programs and things like that. The ability to walk to school, and we have, I mean, even the EPA has got a website on this about why Johnny isn't walk to school, because it's too far, and kids don't get enough exercise the way it is now. I mean, having grown up before computers, we were outside playing all the time, and now kids are inside. They got great thumbs. So I think that we need to allow the kids a chance, whenever possible, to have a school that's accessible to walk to.
Help me on this. We need to get you more specific, because if you're elected to the school board, you're going to hit this K-3-4-8 thing, which probably is one of the areas that at least there's more consensus than there is on some. So you need to tell us whether you would be an opponent of the K-3-4-8 split if you're on the school board.
I think I need to hear a pretty good argument for doing it. Okay. I think I haven't heard that argument yet. As a scientist too, I'm a trained skeptic. Okay, so for me, in a sense, I want to see good data that shows that this is going to be helpful to student achievement before I would agree to that split. Wow. And what I've heard so far is that it just won't be any worse. Again, do we want to spend all this money for a system that won't be any worse? If we're going to spend money, then I think we ought to have some pretty good sense that it's going to be somehow better in terms of student achievement. So I'll come in as a skeptic. I could be swayed by arguments if you've got a good argument.
Okay. Let's go back to the referendum issue, if we could, for a minute, John. Certainly the $60 million is out the window as far as you're concerned. You don't like the $45 million, and yet we clearly do need to do something with our buildings, and the money certainly isn't there. This community has supported referendums in the past, when a compelling argument is made.
Right.
And I think that's what I'm hearing you say, give me arguments and you might be able to sway my opinion. Two things. Is there an amount, a referendum amount, that you would be in support of? And secondly, what does this district need to do to bring the community together to get some kind of consensus among the voters in this community? I guess first we've got to get consensus on the school board, and then get consensus amongst the voters so that we can get something going here and get our buildings brought up to where they should be.
Well, let me answer it this way. A good question could be asked is, why have the schools been allowed to deteriorate to the point they are? Roosevelt's in bad shape. I've been in most of the schools. As a supervisor, student teachers, I've been in most of the schools. And I'm not blaming this particular school board, because this has been going on for a long time. And it seems to me that we should have been, and we should be in the future, budgeting a certain amount of money every year for fixing leaky roofs and whatever else is the problem. But to just sort of put that off and say, well, okay, we're being real frugal here, and then get to the point where we did, like with Jefferson, where the school was so far gone it just had to be torn down and replaced. I don't think that's good stewardship of public facilities. So, we need to be good stewards of public funds and public, the public school system, and that means, long-term planning in terms of facility upkeep and repair. It hasn't been done. So, what that costs right now, I think it's going to cost more than it should, because there's a bunch of schools that have been let go, and if you listen to the people, and what I'm hearing, what I've heard as I've gone around collecting signatures and talking to people, is that they want to save their neighborhood schools. And okay, if you want to save the neighborhood schools, then you're going to have to spend some money. Okay, now what the figures are, school to school, it's going to be different. I think probably Roosevelt, from what I heard, is probably in the worst shape.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to look at the schools, start with the ones that are in the worst shape, figure out what it's going to cost to fix them, put a referendum out there and say, okay, you want this school, now here's your chance to keep it. And then we go to the next one. But we need to spread this out over time. We just can't hit people with $60 million up front. That's a lot of money.
Well, I agree. To answer your question, and maybe it was rhetorical, but I think why we're in the shape we're in with our schools is for the same reason our streets are in the shape they're in. We've had elected officials who have, I think, in fairness to them, tried to be good stewards and hold the line on taxes and not do things sort of ongoing that we needed.
As a fifth generation Oshkonian, he probably could give us a lecture about frugality that would beyond anything I know, and maybe even you, right?
I'm sure.
But anyway, I think you asked something about boundaries too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine said that, fixing school boundaries is a lot like trying to nail jelly to a wall. I mean, neighborhoods change over time. I grew up on 6th Street, and when I was growing up, there was kids everywhere. Every house had a bunch of kids in it. And then we all grew up and got old and moved away. But our parents stayed there, and they were older. And so neighborhoods change over time, and that you have to sort of have some flexibility built. And I think people understand that. But the whole idea of maybe a child living right next door to a school is now going to have to go to school way over here, to me that's silly. I think we put the school in the middle and then we work out from there. As time goes on, there's going to be changes in the neighborhood. School populations are going to fluctuate some, and we may have to move those rings a little bit, but I think when all possible, we need to keep the kids going to their neighborhood schools, because that's where their friends are, that's where they feel comfortable, they know the neighborhood. And I think, if you read the literature on this, that in an indirect way contributes to better student achievement.
Is there any school right now that you would support closing, either because it is in such grave disrepair or because the enrollment is such that it doesn't warrant keeping it open?
I want to start with the assumption that we can keep them all open. Okay. And then I'll listen to arguments for closing them. Now, the latest plan that I heard was that they're only planning on closing 3 more.
Correct. Lincoln, Smith, and Oakland.
Yeah, right. I think we just put a lot of upkeep into Smith, and I'm wondering why we're closing it already. As long as the work has been done, we should keep that one open. If Oakland was closed, I think I would want to see another school built on the north side of town. The potential for development out on that side of town is good, but I think that not having a school out there hurts the real estate situation. So that, we need something. And if we built a Traeger-like school with both an elementary and middle school wing, then that could feed into North High School, which might ease some of that imbalance.
follow-up on boundaries.
Sure, go ahead.
Kind of the foundation of this boundary switch is to have a more even number of enrollment between West and North high schools. What's your view on that?
Well, I mean, I think that if parents want to, at the present time, if parents want to, if they're in the on the north zone, they can request to go to the west or vice versa. So if they don't like where they are, they don't have to go to school there. They can choose to go someplace else.
Choice hasn't evened out the disparity, though, has it?
It's true. I mean, I've been in both schools, science wings at least.
Sure.
You know, I think that when I sit in the classes, I don't see any big difference in class sizes. Now, maybe I'm just not watching the right classes, but I get out there to see, you know, my student teachers and clinicians, and you know, I don't see any problems. Now, maybe there are problems. Again, I'll listen to an argument, but you know, I don't think that the class sizes are much bigger in West than they are in North.
No Child Left Behind. What do you think of it, and would you support its reauthorization?
No.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, you know, I know there's some good arguments for it, but from what I've seen in our district over the past few years, I've noticed teachers, and this is a really serious issue, because of the pressure of tests and doing well on these. Teachers are going away from what we really know is good pedagogy, and going back to just giving students facts that they can have on, so they do well on the test. And so we're sort of going back to the past where we had this sort of lecture and recitation model of teaching when we know better. And I think yeah, No Child Left Behind has had a very bad effect on our schools. One of our challenges, and one of the things that I'm excited about to get on the school board, is to working with teachers, and how can we pass and do well on the test and still teach the way we know we should be teaching. I think within the context of No Child Left Behind, I don't see it going away soon. We have to figure out creative ways of doing the kinds of things that we know that are good things to do based on, you know, all the educational research. I mean, this is a really good time to be a teacher. We know more about learning and more about effective teaching than we ever have. And I'm not seeing it happen in the classrooms in the last few years, I think because of No Child Left Behind. And, you know, that's not a good thing, not for us. Now maybe, you know, some big city schools, someplace No Child Left Behind has had a good impact. But I don't think we had those kinds of problems to start with. But it's had a sort of a bad effect on us. And again, one size fits all is always a problem. You know, and you know, in relation to that, I think that also I think teachers ought to have more autonomy in their classrooms, and schools ought to have more autonomy. And that's part of what the small school research has found, is that small schools aren't always successful. They're successful when teachers have more decision-making ability about how they're going to teach and that sort of thing.
No Child Left Behind forces them to study math and reading tests almost on a monthly basis, right?
I can't believe how often and how long these kids are
Unbelievable.
tested. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that takes away from instructional time.
Absolutely.
And there's all kinds of research that shows the more instructional time, the better the kids learn. So it's counterproductive.
Yeah. Question on future of teachers. Both the incumbents are running on the school board. Both Mr. McDermott and Mr. Schneider. There was an innocuous little thing that came up this summer that a teacher requested a leave of absence without pay for continuing education, and both of them voted no. And it was defeated. The teacher did not get the leave on a 4-3 vote. What's your response to something like that?
Interesting. You know, I'm all for professional development for teachers. And
This was even without pay.
yeah, I find that interesting, and I'd have to know the specifics of the case and the teacher and all that kind of stuff. But I think we should encourage teachers, if there's something, if a teacher can make a compelling argument that I really need to do this to be a better teacher, and I'm willing to, I believe in it so much that I'm willing to give up my salary,
Yeah.
I think we should take that seriously.
This is a long-term policy with this school board, going back to Dennis McHugh. This school board, the majority, simply do not approve leave of absences for continuing ed for some of their teachers.
No, I think that, I would disagree with that. I think that I'd have to overturn Mr. McHugh on that one. Yeah.
Well, you'd have to run for the city council then. Because that's where he is
That's
now.
right, he's moved over there, hasn't
He's
he?
moved.
Without challengers.
Without challenges. Yeah.
Just very quickly, obviously the district has said it's not going to bring forward a referendum now this year. Smart.
2009 now, yeah.
2009. If they can't get their act together here and a referendum fails at any level, what do you think is our fallback position at that point?
My fallback position would be to say, let's take a look at the schools that need repair, and we put money into bringing Roosevelt up and then down the line, and just basically, this whole business of going back to when they discovered their structural deficit and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's not the Oshkosh school system that's broken. I mean, I think we're all, well, I don't know, were you an Oshkosh person?
I am.
Okay, so, products of I went to Catholic school, but we're products of the Oshkosh school system in one way or another. Have friends that have, I think we did okay. I don't see anything broken there. And, remember my old grandfather telling me, John, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so, what are we doing here? It's a lot of money to spend on something like that. What's broken is the state funding formula, and that needs to be fixed.
Sure. Well, on that note, we're almost out of time. I'm going to ask you to just take a look into camera 3. Tell folks why they should vote for you on Tuesday, February 19th.
Thank you. I'd hope you vote for me. I would bring a commitment to neighborhood schools and my expertise in educational research to the board. I think I can help them make decisions about programs and things like that, curriculum decisions that are based in research. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, terrific. Thanks very much for
Thanks,
being
John.
here. And of course, so we want to thank Kevin Jahnke for being here in the first half hour, John Lemberger for the second half of the program, and in future editions of Eye on Oshkosh, we'll be interviewing some of the other candidates for school board. So we'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.